The God Complex, a novel by Michael Shandy. Prologue. Chapter 1. An Act of Kindness. It is obvious to both women that their old horse will not be able to pull the cart with a frozen wheel. The old horse could bear them both, an age beyond her years mother along with her fully blossomed young daughter. But the wedding gifts they carry will certainly be lost if left along this Croatian mountain road. Not that there will be many passers-by in the year 1363, but anything left unattended this close to the forest is wisely considered forfeit, and the nearest village would take until long after dark to reach on foot. As the mother is about to send her daughter ahead on the old horse, an elegant coach thunders out of the forest and around the bend, swerving to narrowly miss the humble little cart, but for the extraordinary skill of its driver. Startled by the sudden appearance of the carriage, the two women grow tense when it pulls to a stop just ahead. Impeding the path of those from the wealthy class can be filled with potential consequence. Being well aware of this fact, the mother begins clutching her daughter's arm ever tighter. The driver, a stout middle-aged gentleman who has already proven his worth in handling the coach, jumps down to open the carriage door, which swings into his hand before he can grasp the handle. A tall, imposing figure of a man nearing 40 years of age with chiseled features and dark complexion. He exudes the confidence of one who has earned his station in life as he springs out to inspect the situation. As he approaches the women, a generous smile begins to emanate from beneath the broad rim of his hat, which moves Mom to ease the clamp-like grip from her daughter's arm. When his smile turns toward the young woman, her mom notices their eyes locking together for much longer than a moment. He removes his hat with a polite bow. "Good evening, ladies. My name is Vasilius Rengwa. How may I be of service?" He offers in a strong, resonant voice of the type that inspires confidence. The mother steps up to answer. Though as giddy as her daughter, she points to the wheel. "Well, kind sir, our cart be stuck." Vasil leans over to inspect the situation and can easily see a broken axle. "The problem is your axle snapped," and he is cut off with a shriek from the young maiden. "Mother, we won't make it." Holding her finger to her lips, she looks towards Vasil. The mix of hope and despair in her eyes moves him profoundly. "Calm now, girl." Her mom comforts her. "The Lord, he work in ways strange." The young woman wipes her tears while trying to offer a smile. Vasil is so moved by her beauty, a purity of emotion she cannot conceal. He blushes for the first time in recent memory. To be sure, this also does not escape Mother's notice as she pushes her daughter to unhitch their horse from the cart. "Now be getting on wit ya," she commands. "I be jes fine, don't you worry." Vasil sees what the plan is. "No, absolutely not," assuming authority over the situation. With a whistle and gesture, he summons his carriage. Without hesitation, it rolls, as if on rails, in its reverse course. "If you please, you will take my carriage." He reaches out gently with a reassuring caress of his palm across the cheek of this young beauty, while offering his handkerchief for her tears. "I could not bear knowledge of the unhappiness upon this face, should you not make your holiday." He cannot break his gaze into her turquoise eyes. With her light olive complexion and flowing auburn hair glistening in the waning rays of the sun, he already knows he could want for nothing more than to share his life and his bed with this young woman for the remainder of his days. As he lifts her over the side of the cart to retrieve their things, a moment of backlight reveals the strong, sinuous lines of her thighs, her breasts firm and perfect. A vision of all he has ever desired in highlight as the setting sun reveals her full profile. For a moment, just long enough to be forever etched upon his memory. She grows increasingly flirtatious while handing things over to Vasil, who passes them down the brigade line to his driver. Then on to the mother, who is organizing it all in the carriage. Once all the items have been secured in the carriage, Vasil helps the mother into the coach, Then he extends his hand to her now overtly flirtatious young daughter, who accepts it with a giggle. I can only hope you might accept as gracefully the next time, should I ask for your hand again. Vasil's words are spoken through his warm, passionate smile and that strong, reassuring voice. He can feel her tremble ever so slightly as he holds her hand. Her eyes give him all the answer he needs. He calls up to his driver. "My good man, will you be so kind as to deliver these lovely young women to wherever their travels dictate?" "Understood, my lord. I shall secure their road with all skill," his driver answers back. Vasil reassures the women. "Then I am most certain you shall be received in good cheer by your hosts, as his skills are the finest I have ever known." "Second only to you, my lord," his driver exclaims. Vasil again calls to his driver. "And one other task might I charge you with?" "It is my pleasure to serve, my lord. Return to me whatever confidence this lovely young woman might choose to reveal." Vasil then leans in close to her ear with a whisper, "Until we meet again." Chapter 2. Betrayal. Long after dark, walking alongside the horse, Vasil arrives at a humble little lodge at the edge of a village. Once inside, he patiently waits after calling out for the innkeeper. Finally, an elderly man, small, scrappy, and alert, emerges from the back with a very suspicious eye on Vasil. "Can't say, I seen you here for." The last word just left hanging in the thin, damp mountain air that flows freely through the lobby as he looks Vasil up and down. "I usually travel this route by coach," replies Vasil, while shrugging off the slight chill. The owner of the inn purses his lips and nods his understanding. "My horse needs a stable, if you please. Also, would it be possible to get a fresh warm bath?" inquires Vasil as he signs the registry. "A bit late, sir," the old man reluctantly replies. "My girls sleep." Vasil pulls 3 gold coins from his purse and stacks them one at a time on the counter. "This should cover my lodge for the evening and adequately demonstrate my appreciation for your accommodation." The aging man's face lights up with delight as he scoops the coins into his hand. "As you please, my lord, thank you." The old man hurries off to draw a bath for Vasil, who is already halfway up the tight staircase. The old man calls to him. "Care for a meal, my lord?" "That would be too kind of you, my good fellow." "Only too kind." Vasil pauses on the stairs, swooning at the thought of fresh bread and maybe a slice of beef. From the top of the stairwell, he hears the old man yell for his daughter to wake up and start cooking. With his generous guest comfortably retired, the old man readies for bed. Looking in on his daughter, he finds her fast asleep. Shuffling back to his room, as he leans over to blow out the last candle, a sudden chill shoots up his spine. He turns to witness a frightening apparition emerging from the shadows in the corner. It is a tall, dark figure whose face is hidden under the hood of his cloak. The old man begins to tremble uncontrollably from an unknown fright coming from deep within. The old man pleads, "Of slight value I have, Jez. Mercy, please." The intruder pulls back his hood and snarls, revealing his long, sharp fangs. "And why? Mercy for you and your delicious young." His words fade away as he smiles at the thought of defiling the voluptuously plump young woman in the next room. With tears in his eyes, the old man continues to plead to this demon from the dark. "Now, my child, please. Let us barter, I beg you." The old man's desperation has little effect on this sinister intruder. The vampire laughs. "As you say, there is nothing here worth barter." The old man remembers the gold coins. "These I have, please, sir," he humbly offers. "Where did you get those?" demands the vampire. "Do we barter?" the old man cautiously inquires as he pulls back a bit. The vampire gently sways to the wafting scent of the blossoming young maiden. But as his curiosity over the coins wins out, he pushes by the old man to look at the registry. He sees the name Vasilius Rangwa. He's of lineage, no doubt, the old man tells him. The vampire growls under his breath. Yes, I know this family. Sejapan Lakovic is a cousin. His lineage is through his mother. The family of Lakovic and I have crossed paths many times for over 100 years, snarls the terrifying intruder. Then, hissing like a viper before the strike, he dissolves into a wisp of black smoke that disappears up the stairs. Sleeping soundly in the modest, though cozy accommodations of the inn, Vasil is unaware of the dark menace taking form next to his bed. A sinister gratitude fills this dweller of the shadows with a joy he has not known for so long a time. He looks upon Vasil while pondering the opportunity presented. He speaks softly to himself while considering the possibilities of the moment. The great Count of the Sekelis and your vile offspring Andrea, hailed as heroes for the murder of my sweet precious. Then an epiphany. Yes, of course, death drifts too easily into the halls of memory. He makes a small cut on his forearm while lauding himself for the brilliance of his design. He laments with a controlled malice. Instead, I offer a dark secret that will haunt the family Lakovic for all your days. It will cause your house to recede from all thought and memory. He leans over and squeezes a few drops of the blood from his self-inflicted wound through Vasil's slightly parted lips, who opens his eyes. But before he can react, the vampire shoves his arm hard down into Vasil's mouth. Let those of your house rip the beating heart from your chest while they sever your screaming head over deeds never committed, for cause imposed through no fault of your own. Some blood rolls down the side of Vasil's cheek, and then just as quick he escapes out a slightly open window as an apparition, leaving Vasil in a state of shock upon the bed. He drifts back into a nightmarish sleep, left to discover on his own the cruel fate imposed by a visitor in the dark. A fate he will soon realize was not a mere nightmare induced by one too many scallions or an oversized glass of wine. Chapter 3. Humility and Vengeance. In the year 1647, Vasil, who these days rarely wears the clothes one associates with the upper classes, lives in the north of France. He has recently taken up residence in a humble little cottage at the edge of a small village where he raises rabbits, as both a blood source and for income, so as not to raise suspicions among the locals. In a clearing behind the cottage, he maintains a few cages of plump, tasty stock. They are a breed of his own making and quite popular with the locals for both their size and unique sweetness of flavor. Vasil opens a cage and, one by one, pulls out 3 conies. Slitting their throats, he bleeds them into a modest chalice, after which he lays them gently on a board to carry them inside, to be cleaned and delivered on his way to the village tavern. Cleaning the carcasses while sipping the blood, as if a generous pour of an acceptable table wine brings a moment of forced contentment. Yet his hope is that it might someday be lasting. Having once been a man of strong character and high principles, he at least accepts this as his lot. He has never really come to terms with his actions during those early years of his affliction, so now he keeps a quiet life, blending in for as long as he can before moving on. When he later enters the village tavern, Vasil takes a stool at his preferred table while responding politely to a few casual greetings. Though cordial with the villagers, he makes no attempt to integrate with the townsfolk as concerns the goings-on around the village. He sits with his back mostly towards the other patrons with a view out of a small dirty window. Despite the chatter amongst the men of the village, he remains alone to his thoughts except for occasional pleasantries with the tavern staff, and in turn no one seems motivated to draw him into their circle. Relaxing with a mug of brew, he suddenly feels a presence unlike any he has ever known in his many years wandering this world. Scanning the tavern for its source, he is drawn to a woman across the room at a table by a window. At first, he is surprised that she seems to sit unnoticed amidst mostly boisterous men drinking heavily and the robust women serving them. She has a short sword at her side, bow and quiver lying across her table, and a bulging backpack leaned against the wall, just behind her with a thin rope draped across it. He gets lost in her deep olive complexion, the long, flowing, sandy-colored hair caressing her petite, muscular frame. The countless thin braids she wears seem to pull her face into a tight perfection as they run across her scalp, disappearing behind her back. And her face is of such beauty, Vasil is not sure if he has ever seen her equal. There seems an almost iridescent glow off her skin, not that he can see so much as sense. He wonders how it seems he is the only one present to notice the ample endowments that cannot be kept secret under her thin jacket, which is made of a material he has never before seen. This intrigues him, as he has spent considerable time among the nobility and elites who spare no effort in acquiring the finest of all that is obtainable. She turns her head to stare him straight in the eyes. Vasil cannot believe how unnerving this is. He has encountered others of his kind, not to mention a few from the worlds of sorcery and mysticism, but he has had little use for their bloodlusts and intrigues since he gained control over his early years of rage, though that was not before extracting vengeance on the innkeeper for his betrayal. His thoughts drift to the unhindered carnal exploitation of that old man's daughter, while the newfound power of his will forces the old man to hold an unbroken audience. After hours of defiling this unabashedly surrendering young woman, he finally turns to the old man with a wicked taunt. "And now, I will leave you with both your greatest fear and your darkest desire." Vasil keeps the old man pinned to his chair as he drains his veins, but not to the point of death. The daughter is left with a savage, unquenchable fire between her thighs that will forever be in need of relentless gratification. She again reaches for Vasil as he dresses, but gets brushed away as he buckles his belt. When he starts towards the door, she crawls over to her father, reaching in his trousers to try and coax his long dormant member to life. The old man cries in anguish. Vasil laughs over his shoulder. "Tell me you've not long desired this moment." "You broken," the man's daughter cries out, "but there be a couple upstairs." At that the young nymph races out of the parlor and up the staircase. With a smile, Vasil closes the door of the inn behind himself. He has not thought of this incident for over 200 years. It is as if this mysterious woman across the room is extracting his innermost secrets as her unflinching stare peers deep into the darkest corners of his mind. Caught unaware, Vasil cannot stop the stream of unfiltered consciousness flowing into open thought. She removes a finely weaved glove before lifting her cup with a bare hand to her lips for a final drink, then abruptly stands, breaking her spell as she puts her glove back on, gathers her few things, and heads for the door. Vasil is at a complete loss until she pauses at the door to peer back over her shoulder at him. She tosses him a smile and is gone. Chapter 4. A Proposition. Sitting stunned for a moment, as if anchored to his chair, Vasil realizes he knows nothing of this woman. Yet somehow she extracted his darkest secrets through some unknown magic, a magic beyond his realm of experience. He swallows the rest of his brew in one big gulp, then darts out the door in pursuit. Racing to the middle of the tiny cobblestone town square, he sees no trace of her presence. Rushing back inside, he examines the spot where she had been sitting. Trembling with excitement, he picks up her cup and gets a traceable scent that was certainly left for his benefit. He charges back outside, putting his nose to the wind, and picks up her trail. Looking around first so as to avoid exposure among the village residents, Vasil runs to the edge of town where the village meets the forest. He strips off all his clothing, hiding them under a large stone. He then transforms into a giant wolf-like form with the size and front claws of a grizzly bear before chasing the breeze into the forest night. Slivers of moonlight slice through the forest canopy. As the exhilaration of the moment surpasses any he can immediately recall while racing across creeks and bashing through thickets of thorns, with her scent tread delicately across the bed of spikes just overhead. He charges in anxious pursuit of what? He does not know. It is the mystery that drives him, as a beast untamed, to a destiny without preconceptions. Only the yearning to know once you are there. Following what seems an impossibly placed scent trail deep into the forest, Vasil bursts into a clearing where immediately it is as if his senses were confused and nothing seems to come or go from any particular direction. He stands on his haunches with a huge roll of his powerful shoulders while stretching his neck, rapidly sniffing in all directions for anything that sensed of familiarity. Snarling with those monstrous canines, he arches his back, letting go a roar which ripples across the clearing and down the forested canyon under the nearly full moon. He suddenly feels the slight burn of an extremely sharp blade pressed with a gentle force across the back of his neck. He slowly sits. He opens his mouth to speak. Then a sultry voice whispers behind his ear to keep silent. He can tell by the strength of her grip, just above his elbow, that she can indeed sever his head at her whim. Yet it is as if her voice itself was calming the breezes that guide souls through the invisible realms, leaving him feeling oddly at peace. She speaks softly. Who am I? I am the dreams of your youth, all that you had ever hoped life could be. He feels her grip tighten and a slight increase in the burn at the base of his neck. But you, she continues, yes, I've known many of your kind. At this, Vasil slowly lowers his head, closing his eyes in preparation for his end. Always handsome and charming, she pauses to think for a moment. Well, not so much at first, but then nothing was very refined in those times. But always, in the end, she takes a much darker tone, the nightmare that makes a mortal afraid to sleep alone. Something about that statement strikes a chord with him, causing Vasil to open his eyes and risk a slight turn to look at her. Who are you? What are you? Please, at least confess me that, he pleads as he resumes his human form. She smiles at the sound of resignation in his voice. She pulls the sword off his neck while releasing his arm. As quickly as he snaps around to see her, she is several meters away. She cryptically replies, I am from beyond memory. Even with your education, that answer is probably beyond your understanding, and certainly beyond your acceptance at this time. Why do you hunt me? He questions. Hunt you? She lets out a smug sigh. I've been tracking you for over 200 years, on and off. I certainly had other things to do than simply follow you around for centuries. Vasil screams his outrage. What? Then softening her tone, as for me, I've been cut off from my people. The spirit of my kind left long ago. Vasil scowls with a raised eyebrow. I think I do understand now. Maybe the part that I have found your kind serves as a suitable alternative to sustain my spirit, but there is much, much more, she confides with a smile. He begins, since you no doubt have knowledge of my name and station. No doubt about it, she nods. Though how do you prefer to be addressed? He finishes, not allowing her the satisfaction of stifling his words. There is a sadness in her reply. My true name need no longer be uttered, as there are no longer any ears capable to hear it. Vasil is moved by the longing in her voice. She continues after a brief pause. You may know me as Macias, a princess from an ancient time, Her head drops. With a thoughtful breath, she takes a much more solemn tone, as if speaking only to herself, who ventured too far from home. Vasil jumps on her moment of vulnerability. "And so you think I will just be some kind of pet?" "Not at all," she says matter-of-factly. "But I know things you do not." Even though they have just met, he senses the truth in her words. She adds, "You are different. You actually have a sense of remorse." She spins her small sword like a gunslinger back into its sheath. Vasil notes that even his ears could hear no sound off her blade. Vasil demands, "And what are these?" "Things I do not know." She removes her pack and quiver, then slips that thin jacket off her shoulders, gently placing it on the ground. She reaches her hands to the neckline of her woven jersey and, as if invisible zippers were attached to the tips of her middle fingers, the fabric peels away from her flesh as she slides the tips of her fingers ever so gently down her torso. The faint glow of her skin in the moonlight entices a desire beyond his experience. She reaches her hands out in front of her, slicing her left fingernail across the tip of her right index finger. She beckons to him as the first drops of her blood appear. To Vasil, her blood glows. "I need you at your peak, not melting from the inside out." As the first drops of her blood enter his veins, he feels a surge of power, the likes of which he never knew could exist. His long dormant chakra points fire one by one, starting in the root and on up to his crown. He then feels an unknown energy emitting from his body, as if blissful threads of desire are being pulled through each of his pores. Lowering her finger from his lips, he reaches up with one hand, gently pulling her face close to his. First, she gives a wisp of a kiss on his lips, then brushes her cheek across his as she tiptoes her lips to his ear to again whisper her desire. "I need you at your peak. Can you do that for me?"